The Western world lived with the Cold War for more than 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Any reason not to believe that we could have a similar détente between the United States and North Korea?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you look back throughout history, and I guess the best analog for our situation with North Korea today was the Cuban Missile Crisis under JFK, and I think that even in that scenario, if you look at kind of the history books and talk to the people that were involved, Khrushchev had given his submarine captains the ability to press the button. So our fate as the United States and potential nuclear war was left in the hands of a couple submarine captains, which is frightening to know. Today you've got a guy that runs North Korea that is a complete lunatic, and the apathy towards the Trump administration in the press. I've seen so many articles that say, well, Kim Jong-un's being the rational one and Trump's being the irrational one. You're talking about someone who has oppressed his people, who's killed relatives with anti-aircraft guns, who is a complete whack job. And North Korea, do you know what North Korea's economy is in GDP? It's $12 billion. Do you know what South Korea's GDP is? 1.4 trillion. Okay? When you look at command and control regimes or oppressive regimes, this guy has been the worst person in the world for his people. He runs work camps.
Of course,
all
we
these
know
things
that.
but to call him rational,
well, I'm not suggesting he's rational.
Is unbelievable to me.
I'm not suggesting he's rational.
And so,
what I'm suggesting is that the current situation might persist.
So when Obama handed the reins to Trump, you remember when they had that fateful meeting in the White House on the handover? He told Trump that the single largest challenge he'll face as the president is North Korea.
That's right.
And that we had already issued the rhetoric publicly and globally that we can't stand for a nuclear armed North Korea. And that was under the Obama administration and truthfully under the Bush administration. So this isn't a Trump issue as much as everyone wants to make it a Trump issue. And I think we have to separate ourselves from that argument. And the answer is, I don't believe that we as a country can afford to have someone that unstable have the ability to launch a weapon at the United States.
Given the risk North Korea presents, does it make any sense to you that the South Korean won has been as stable as it has been, and that South Korean government bonds, 10-year government bonds, trade at exactly the same yield as 10-year treasuries?
The answer is no. And
I ask because I've been scratching my head too.
Again, this goes into kind of the psychological inputs of global investors and even South Korean investors. You've had really 60 years of peace or a little more, and peace has begot more peace. And to your point, they believe nothing is ever going to go wrong, even though there's so much.
Well, it's not just them. Foreign investors are buying those South Korean government bonds too. And foreign investors are trading in South Korean bonds.
So right, they're dropping money into EM because, as we mentioned earlier, global cash balances have never been, as a percentage of global GDP, they've never been close to where they are today. It's why every dip is bought. It's why more money just keeps flowing in and into EM. And South Korea is a large component of all of those things. And so it's going to take a true disconnect I think to get the investors to be scared. So it's mind-boggling to me that South Korean equities trade where they trade, that the South Korean currency trades where it trades, and South Korean bonds trade where they trade, given the potential. Now, I don't know if it's 1 year ago, where would you put it? Where would we have put the odds of us going to a kinetic conflict with North Korea? It's probably 1%, maybe a year ago, or maybe 2 years ago. Maybe that's moved up to, I feel it's maybe 25% today, maybe a little higher. So it's gone up multiples and multiples from where it was, but maybe it's still not the odds-on position. Maybe it's not probable, it's just possible. But still, that with investors they're not thinking about risk in terms of what the true risks to their positions are, because they haven't had to. And I think that's true globally in all markets.
Given that there is so much cash, there's so much liquidity, and it is having this impact on Korean values.
Yeah.
Could you short it, or is it too dangerous?
I think it's too dangerous. Look, when you look at the war plan that the U.S. has developed for North Korea, it's War Plan 5027, right? It's it's hundreds of pages long. There are only a few pages that count. But one of the first things that has to happen is we have to start provisioning things if we're going to go to kinetic conflict over there. And we have to start moving airplanes, troops, fuel. There are a lot of things we have to do before we're really going to get involved in a military capacity. And that switch hasn't been flipped yet. If we flip that switch, then you have to go into a different decision matrix.